This is a reading from The Mystical City of God, The Coronation by Venerable Mary of Agreda. Today's reading is a continuation. 15. During the whole course of my life, from earliest childhood, the Most High has exercised in me continual infirmity, sorrows, and other molestations of creatures. But with the advance of years, he increased also the sufferings of another kind of trial, which made me forget much of those already suffered in the past. It was like a two-edged sword which divided my soul and spirit, as the Apostle says, Hebrews chapter 4, verse 12. This trial was that constant fear of which I have so often spoken, and for which I have been reprehended in this history. Much of it I felt even from childhood, but it developed and rose to the highest pitch since my entrance into religion, where I applied myself entirely to the spiritual life and experienced the manifestations of the Lord to my soul. Since that time, God has placed me upon this cross, or into this winepress of the heart, namely, permitting me to remain in the continual dread of not being on the right path, of being deceived, or of having lost the grace and the friendship of God. My difficulties were much augmented by the publicity which some persons incautiously, and to my great grief, gave to my affairs, and by the terrors with which others filled me at my danger. So deeply rooted in my heart was this terror that it has never ceased, and could never be allayed by the satisfaction and complete assurances of my confessor and superiors, nor by their kind encouragement, nor by their corrections, nor by the many other means they used for this purpose. What is more, although the angels and the Queen of Heaven and the Lord himself continually reassured and soothed me, and although I feel myself free in their presence, yet as soon as I issue from the sphere of divine light, I am again assailed with incredible violence. This might easily be recognized as the cruel machination of the infernal dragon, if my troubles, afflictions, and fears had not the appearance of arising from other sources than the devil. This fiend especially assails me whenever I am about to open my heart to my confessors, particularly to the superior who directs me. For nothing does this prince of darkness fear more than the light and the power possessed by the ministers of the Lord. 16. In the bitterness of this sorrow and the most ardent desire of grace and of not losing God, I have lived many years, and the various and numerous happenings amid this constant strife I cannot record. The root of this fear, I believe, was holy, but many of its branches have been fruitless, although the divine wisdom knew how to use them all for his different ends. On this account he permitted the enemy to avail himself of the blessings of the Lord for my affliction. For the inordinate fear which hinders the good, though it appear to imitate ever so much the good, is evil and of the demon. My afflictions have at times reached such a pass that I considered it a great gain not to lose the life of my body, and especially that of my soul. But the Lord, whom the winds and the waves obey, Matthew chapter 8, verse 27, and whom all things serve, Psalm 118, verse 91, who gives nourishment to every creature in opportune time, Psalm 144, verse 15, has now, in his condescension, wished to give peace to my spirit, in order that I might enjoy more tranquility in writing the rest of this history. It is some years ago that the Lord consoled me and promised me peace and interior quiet before I should die, informing me, at the same time, that the dragon is so furious against me because he suspects there is little time left him for persecution. 17. In order to set about writing this third part of the Lord on a certain day, in order to set about writing this third part, the Lord, on a certain day, with singular condescension and complacency, spoke to me as follows: My dearest spouse, I wish to alleviate thy pains and moderate thy afflictions. Quiet thyself, my dove, and rest securely in the sweetness of my love and of my powerful and kingly word. For I assure thee upon this word that it is I who speak to thee, and who have selected thy paths according to my pleasure. It is I that lead thee along these ways. It is I, the same one that is at the right hand of the eternal Father, and present in the sacrament of the Holy Eucharist, in the species of bread. I give thee this assurance in order that thou quiet and convince thyself, for I do not wish thee, my dearest, to be my slave, but my daughter and spouse, and I desire thee to enjoy my gifts and delights. Enough of fears and of bitterness hast thou suffered. Let peace and tranquility enter into thy afflicted heart. Such favors and assurances of the Lord, often repeated, one would think should not be humiliating, but should afford only the greatest joy. But they are of such a kind that they abase the heart to the lowest dust, and fill me with solicitude and anxiety. Those that think different have little experience, and are only slightly capable of the secret operations of the Most High. It is certain that I have been instructed in many new things interiorly, and was much alleviated in the troubles and temptations caused by these disorderly fears. But the Lord is so wise and powerful that on the one hand he assures, and on the other he stirs up the soul, injecting new fear of falling, and thereby preserving it in the knowledge and humiliation of self. 18. I must acknowledge that by these and other continual favors, the Lord has not so much freed me from fears as confirmed me in them. For I live in continual dread, lest I show myself ungrateful and fail to correspond by displeasing him or losing him, lest I be wanting in the perfect love of him who is so good in himself, and lest I should not deserve to retain the fullest possible love toward him, or even that which is not possible. Filled with these anxieties, and on account of my great misery, solicitude, and many faults, I said on one occasion to the Most High, my sweetest love, Lord and Master of my soul, although thou givest me so many assurances to quiet my troubled heart, how can I do away with my fears amid the dangers of this laborious and dreadful life, full of temptations and persecutions, during which I hold my treasure in a vase more fragile and weak than that of any other creature? With paternal condescension he responded, my cherished spouse, I do not wish thee to lose the just fear of offending me, but it is my will that thou be not disturbed and grieved in a disorderly manner, nor so as to hinder thee from rising to my exalted and perfect love. Thou hast my mother for a teacher and a model, for thy instruction and imitation. I shall assist thee by my grace, and support thee with my direction. Tell me then what thou askest, or what thou desirest for thy peace and security. 19. With the greatest resignation that I could muster, I replied, Highest Lord and Father, much is that which thou askest, although thy goodness and immense love deserve that I fulfill it all. But I know my weakness and inconstancy, and I shall be satisfied in no other way than by not offending thee, neither by the slightest thought, nor by the least movement of my faculties. And I shall rest only when all my actions shall be according to thy pleasure and good will. The Lord answered, my continual help and favor shall not fail thee if thou correspond to them. In order that thou mayest do it so much the better, I wish to perform a work which is in keeping with the love I have for thee. I will connect my immutable being with thy insignificance by an especial providence, chaining and binding thee in such a way that whenever thou shalt, in the weakness of thy will, do anything less pleasing to me, thou shalt feel my influence detaining and recalling thee to me. The effect of this blessing thou shalt know and feel immediately within thyself, just like a slave who is bound by chains, in order that she may not fly. 20. To the great joy and advantage of my soul, the Almighty fulfilled his promise, and among many other favors and blessings, which may not be mentioned and which do not concern my purpose, none has been so precious to me as this one. I perceive it not only in great dangers, but in the smallest, and in such a way that if I neglect or carelessly omit any work or ceremony, although it be no more than to humiliate myself, or to kiss the floor on entering the choir to adore the Lord, as is customary in the convent, I at once feel a sweet force which draws me and calls my attention to the defect, and which on its part permits not the least imperfection. If sometimes in my weakness I fall into any, this divine force is at once present, causing in me heart-rending pain. This pain serves as a check to the least disorderly inclination, and at the same time as a goad towards seeking immediate remedy for the fault or imperfection committed. As the gifts of the Lord are without regret, Romans chapter 11, verse 29, he has not only bound me with this mysterious chain, but in his divine condescension, on a certain day, that of his holy name and circumcision, I perceived that he tripled it, in order to restrain me and bind me still more forcibly, since a triple cord, as the wise man says, is difficult to break. Ecclesiasticus chapter 4, verse 12. All this was necessary on account of my weakness, in order that I might not be overcome by the importunate and astute temptations of the ancient serpent. 21. In the meanwhile, these temptations increased so much that in spite of the blessings and commandments of the Lord mentioned above, in spite of the demands of obedience and of others not to be mentioned here, I nevertheless hesitated to begin the last part of this history, for I felt again the fury of the powers of darkness which tried to overwhelm me. I understood this, and I will explain it by what St. John says in the 12th chapter of the Apocalypse, that the great red dragon shot forth from its maw a river of water against that heavenly woman. Apocalypse chapter 12, verse 15, whom he had pursued from heaven, and that since he could not touch or destroy her, he turned in great rage against the remnants and the seed of that great lady, against those who are sealed with the testimony of Jesus Christ. Apocalypse chapter 12, verse 17, in his church. During the time of which I am speaking, this ancient serpent strained all his wrath to disquiet me, and, as far as he could, force me to commit some faults, which retarded the purity and perfection of life required of me and necessary for writing what I was commanded. While this interior battle continued, the feast of the Holy Guardian Angel on the 1st of March intervened. Reciting matins in the choir, I suddenly felt a noise or a great disturbance, so that I shrank and humiliated myself to the very dust. Then I saw a great multitude of angels which filled the whole choir, and from their midst proceeded a still greater refulgence or splendor, as of a judge seated upon a tribunal or judgment seat. I understood at once that it was the Archangel Saint Michael. Without delay, they intimated to me that they were sent by the Most High with his special power and authority to arraign me for my negligence and for my faults. 22. I desired to prostrate myself on the earth to acknowledge my transgressions and humbly to weep before those celestial judges. But as I was surrounded by the nuns, I dared not make the presence of the angels known by prostrating myself in body. I did what was possible interiorly, bitterly weeping over my sins. In the meantime, I saw the holy angels speaking and conferring with each other, saying, "This creature is useless, slow, and not at all fervent in fulfilling the commands of the Most High and of our Queen. She will not come to a full trust in the blessings and the enlightenments which she continually receives at our hands. Let us deprive her of all those blessings, since she does not put them to use, nor earnestly strive to be so pure and perfect as the Lord teaches her to be. Neither does she proceed to write the life of his most blessed mother, as he has commanded her so many times. If she does not mend, it is not just that she should receive so many and such great favors and instructions in holiness." Hearing these words, I was sadly afflicted at heart, and I wept the more. Full of confusion and grief, I spoke to the holy angels in the bitterness of my soul, and I promised amendment of my faults and obedience unto death to the Lord and to his most holy mother. 23. At my humiliation and my promises, the angelic spirits relaxed somewhat in their severity, and with greater kindness they told me that if I would diligently fulfill what I had promised, they would assure me of their continual favor and assistance, admit me as their companion and friend, and hold intercourse with me in the same way as they converse with each other. I thanked them for their kindness and besought them to present my thanks also before the Most High. They disappeared, warning me that for the favors they would show me, I must imitate them in purity, committing no fault or imperfection willfully, and this they intimated as the condition upon which this promise depended. 24. After these and many other happenings which need not be mentioned, I was left in a state of greater humiliation, as was natural with one who had been so severely reprehended for ingratitude, unworthiness, and insensibility towards so many blessings, exhortations, and commandments. Full of confusion and sorrow, I considered within myself what little excuse or pretext I had for resisting the divine will, in view of all that I had come to know, and in view of its importance to my welfare. I resolved firmly to execute the command or die in the attempt, and I sought for some powerful and tangible means which should rouse and urge me on to combat my want of attention, and which would keep me alert, if possible, against any imperfection in all my operations and movements, so that I might not always do what is most holy and pleasing in the eyes of the Lord. I betook myself to my confessor and superior, and besought him in all the sincerity and submission of my heart to reprehend me severely and force me to be perfect and solicitous in the most exact fulfillment of the divine will, and in the execution of what the divine majesty required of me. Although he was most zealous and vigilant as one who took the place of God, and one who knew his will in my prescribed path, yet he could not always come to my assistance or be present on account of the absentations required by his duties as a religious and as a superior. I resolved, therefore, also to engage one of the nuns to assist me, asking her to reprehend and advise me often, or warn me and stir me up by threats. All these means and others I sought in the most ardent desire of pleasing the Lord, his most holy mother, and my teacher, the holy angels, all of whom were of the same mind in regard to my advance in perfection. 25. In the midst of these solicitudes, it happened to me one night that my holy guardian angel showed himself to me as being particularly pleased, and said, "The Most High wishes to condescend to thy desires, and has appointed me to serve thee as a guide, to spur thee on. I shall be thy faithful friend and companion, in order to advise thee and arouse thy attention, and thou shalt find me present, just as now, whenever thou shalt turn thy eyes toward me, in the desire of pleasing and faithfully serving thy Lord and spouse. I will teach thee how to praise him continually, and how to alternate with me in canticles. I will manifest to thee new mysteries and treasures of his greatness. I will give thee deeper understandings of his immutable being and divine perfections. And whenever thou art engaged in outward works of obedience or charity, or when, through some negligence, thou turnest to earthly and exterior things, I shall call thee to fly to the Lord, and for this purpose I shall use some words of admonition, which often shall be these: Who is like unto the God that dwells on high, and in the hearts of the humble? At other times I shall call to thy mind the blessings thou hast received from God, and thy duty to his love. At still others I shall remind thee to look upon him, and raise up to him thy heart. But to all these warnings thou must be punctual, attentive, and obedient. 26. The Most High also desires me not to conceal to thee any longer a favor which until now thou hast overlooked among the many conferred upon thee by his most liberal bounty, and for this thou must now begin to thank him. It is this, that I am one of the 1,000 angels who served as a guard to our great Queen in this world, and one of those who bear the device of his admirable and holy name. Look upon me, and thou wilt see it upon my breast. I looked, and there recognized the holy name in refulgent splendor, filling my soul with new consolation and jubilee. The holy angel proceeded and said, He also has commanded me to call thy attention to the fact that of us 1,000 angels, very rarely any are appointed as guardian angels of souls, and whatever souls so far have been committed to our care have all been of the number of the saints, and none of them of the reprobate. Take heed then, O soul, of thy obligation not to interrupt this series. For if in spite of this blessing thou art lost, thy punishment and chastisement shall be of the severest ever inflicted upon the damned, and thou shalt be known as the most unhappy and ungrateful of all the daughters of Adam. That thou shouldst be favored by having me as thy guardian, who was one of the guardians of our great Queen, most holy Mary, and the mother of the Creator, was ordained by the most high providence, and in view of thy being chosen to write and imitate the life of his most blessed mother, I was appointed to instruct thee and assist thee, because I was an eyewitness of her divine works and excellences. 27. This office of a guide will be fulfilled principally by the great lady herself, but I am to furnish thee with the necessary images in order to elucidate what the heavenly mistress shall teach thee, and I am to give thee other understandings ordained by the Most High for the clearer recording of the mysteries that manifested to thee. Thou shalt experience all of them, although thou shalt not always know the connection and the sacraments hidden under this providential guidance. Thou shalt also perceive that the Lord himself, making use of this special providence in thy regard, has commissioned me to compel thee with sweetest urgency to imitate the purest Mary our Queen, and to follow her and obey her in doctrine. From now on, I shall execute this mandate of the Lord with greater insistence and force. Resolve then to be most faithful and thankful in regard to these blessings, and seek to scale the highest summits of the perfection taught thee and asked of thee. Remember that even if thou reach the perfection of the highest seraphim, thou shalt still be in the great debt of God's copious and liberal mercy. The new mode of life which the Lord asks of thee is contained and is made clear in the instructions given to thee by our great Queen and Lady, and in what thou shalt understand and write in this third part of her life. Listen to her with a submissive heart. Thank her humbly. Execute her doctrine anxiously and carefully. For if thou do this, thou shalt be fortunate and eternally blessed. 28. Other things which the angels told me need not be mentioned for my present purpose, but what is contained in this introduction will manifest partly the providence of the Most High toward me, and it will also make known the high purposes of divine wisdom in the writing of this history. These are, that not only I, but all who desire may reap the fruit of this blessing, and that each one for himself may use it as an efficacious means of salvation. It will also become evident that Christian perfection cannot be attained without great battles with the demon, or without incessant labor in overcoming and subjecting the passions and evil inclinations of our depraved human nature. Finally, the Heavenly Mother and instructors that I might begin to write this third part of her history in sweetest kindness said to me, My eternal blessing and that of my most holy Son come over thee, in order that thou mayest write the rest of my life, and in order that thou mayest labor and strive after the perfection we desire of thee. Amen.